Hi, this is Douglas Macgregor, CEO, Our Country, Our Choice. We have a special guest today that I think will have a profound impact on everyone who listens to her. Her name is Danielle Holm. She has a unique story to tell, and I'm going to let her tell it. And then there will be thousands of questions, undoubtedly, as a result. The key thing to keep in mind is that this looks like, and we can't know with absolute certainty, but it looks like the arbitrary exercise of state power against a citizen. When I say arbitrary, it's because it doesn't make any sense. There doesn't seem to be any rationale for it. It doesn't seem to be within the boundaries of legal behavior. So, with that point in mind, I'll turn it over to Danielle. Tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then give us your story. It's in your own words.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm honored to meet you, and I'm really looking forward to getting this information out because this country is having a real hard problem with trafficking of human right now, and I'm a victim of that with my child. So, just to dive into it a little bit, it's a long story. I'm going to try to condense into bullet points as much as I can, but I am educated. I have a degree in psychology. I once worked at a psychiatric hospital for adolescents in pediatrics. And actually, it was back then in 2008, 2009, I started recognizing there was an issue in foster care because when I was working at the hospital, I actually started recognizing that it was nothing but foster children coming into this hospital, and we were trained on how to restrain these children, and the nursing staff would give them psychotropic medications and things of that nature. So that was kind of the introduction of me understanding there was a significant problem in foster care, and that was many years ago.
Now,
Well,
where did you experience that?
this was in Massachusetts, where I'm from originally. So I worked at Lowell Youth Treatment Center, and they have since closed down, thankfully, because of the significant abuses that was being found on these foster children. And these foster children were being funneled through there with nowhere to go. And looking back now, I wonder, where are their parents? Because I am now on the other side, and I am a parent, and I don't know where my child is. So I will get into it. In 2016, I was married and I was pregnant. We were traveling all over the country, and that is another story in itself. But the important part is that we had been traveling. We ended up in Alabama. We did not live there. I didn't have an ID from there. We were traveling through the state, heading back to Georgia, where my husband at the time had a house in his name that we were going to try to obtain, and it was in a living will, and his grandfather had just passed away. So we were heading in that direction to go handle that business. And I went into labor, and this is not going to sound normal, but I was surrounded by people. We were actually at a state park. I was surrounded by a bunch of people that I don't know. The ambulance came to pick me up because I was in active labor at this point. And I got into an ambulance, and it was a Sunday night, October 9th, 2016. And there was nothing but government vehicles there, the black SUVs with government plates on the back, surrounding the ambulance. And I got into the ambulance with my husband. We went to the hospital. I was in labor until the next morning. So this was Sunday night. I went to the hospital. The next morning, Monday, October 10th, 2016, I was in labor all night long. My son was born at 7 a.m., perfectly healthy, exactly 40 weeks. He was actually born completely in the sac. It was considered an unusual kind of birth. It's called en caul, where my water never broke, and he was born in the balloon, and the doctor popped the balloon outside of my womb. So that was interesting. But he was born perfect. Everything was great. We thought everything was fine. And all of a sudden, the next day, October 11th, 2016, at 4 p.m., my son was exactly 33 hours old. I was bombarded in the hospital room by a group of people, law enforcement, probably 5 or 6 police officers with guns and badges. a woman by the name of Rachel Israel, who claimed at the time to be a sheriff deputy. Turns out she wasn't. Social workers from Child Protective Services and hospital security guards. They came right into the hospital room and they asked my husband to come with them down the hallway. They removed my husband, not by cuffs or anything. They just asked him to get up and walk out. We were simply thinking at that point, there's obviously a mistake. There's something going on that's wrong because we haven't done anything. We're sober, good people with no criminal backgrounds. There's obviously something going on here that's wrong. So I was in fear because of how many people were surrounding me. But at the same time, I was just thinking this was going to be over soon because this is a mistake. Well, they ended up taking my husband down the hallway, and then the rest of them came and surrounded my bed. Rachel Israel, the one that said she was the sheriff deputy, she said, your son is now in our custody because we have reason to believe you aren't who you say you are. I was very confused, didn't understand what she was talking about. I immediately was like, I have my passport, I have my driver's license. What do you need? Like anything to let you know this is a mistake. I am exactly who I say I am. And she said, nope, that doesn't matter. She's like, he's in our custody. And so all I remember is just holding him. He was literally breastfeeding at that very moment. He was latched on. And so I'm holding him. The hospital security guard comes to my right side. He holds my arm down on the bed and pulls my arm back so that I have to let go of my son. And she reaches down. I go to twist my body this way away from her. And I said, no, you're not touching my son. I haven't done anything wrong. And all I remember is screaming over and over and over. I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't done anything wrong, over and over. And my husband said that's all he could hear from down the hallway. So she said, I have reason. I'm going to justifiably be able to arrest you now. If you resist, you need to give your son to me right now. So I let go because there's nothing I can do. I had an epidural, so I was still numb from the waist down. And even with that, my natural response was to protect my son. So I even tried to get out of the bed while being held down, trying to protect him. And I couldn't move because I was numb. So she was threatening to arrest me. She took my son. She handed him to social workers and they walked out of the room with him. And that was the second time he cried. He only cried twice, when he was born and in that moment that they ripped him out of my arms.
Now, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
This Rachel Israel claimed to be a deputy sheriff, but she wasn't.
Correct.
And the security people that came in there and supported her and enforced her will, they actually worked for the hospital?
Yes. So hospital security, but there was also local police there, about 5 or 6 local police from Anniston Police Department, Anniston, Alabama. So this happened at Regional Medical Center in Alabama.
Why would they have been there? Were they called? Did you ever find out?
Apparently, according to Rachel Israel, she came to court. We had a court hearing, a whole entire court thing for a year about this. And she said she was called about a homeless couple that was having a child. That was her testimony. Her testimony, she also said she never touched the child, which was a lie. She also said there was no warrant and there was no emergency. So she testified to all these things in court. So
if you had valid identity cards, in other words, you had a passport and everything else, and so did your husband, presumably.
Yep.
How could they accuse you of being homeless? What was the justification for that?
There was none.
So you were not homeless.
We were traveling. So like I said, we were traveling. We were bouncing around, and this is where it gets complicated because we were being followed before when I was pregnant. And that's why we were going all around the country to try to get away from these people that were following us. And I believe that's where it stems from his family with the trust.
Okay, now let's stop there for a second. Go to the trust. Explain what happened to his mother, apparently.
Okay.
which
So
seems to foreshadow what happens to you. And where is this
exactly.
family established, and why would they have potentially power and influence?
Right. So my son's father, his name's Christian. He was born and raised in Savannah, Georgia. His great grandfather, so not his grandfather, but the great grandfather, was the mayor of Oliver, Georgia, and he was also a Freemason. He gave, he left the trust with many assets, over $1 million, farmland, many properties. He left this trust to Christian at 2 years old. So he skipped over his own daughter, so Christian's grandmother, and Christian's father, and they left it to Christian as a baby. They then targeted his mother. They kidnapped Christian from the mother and gained legal custodianship over Christian at 2 years old. They meaning his grandfather and grandmother.
Hmm.
And so throughout his entire life, they kept him under control. It was always about the trust. They used the trust money to invest in a company, Vanguard Voice Systems, as well as AccuSpeech. And that is what you use when you talk into your phone and it pops up. They used Christian's trust money to invest in that to start the company. So I don't have absolute evidence of who started what, where, and how, other than Christian had already been trying to attempt to get away from them and live his life. And they didn't like the fact that he was not under their control when he met me. So when he moved up from Savannah, Georgia to New Hampshire, we were being followed. And the only people that I can link that back to is this family who had all of this money in his name that they were trying to do whatever they're trying to do with. And they had people everywhere we went harassing us and stalking us. And it was from state to state to state. And I was pregnant, simply just trying to find safety and get away from it. And so when we were traveling through Alabama, we had talked to an attorney about the estate. And the only thing that he could get his hands on at the time was this one house in Midway, Georgia, that he was going to try to obtain so that we could move into it and find some sort of safety away from people and have our own place. So we were somewhat transient because we were already being followed and attacked and harassed and stalked. So when they said we were homeless, the interesting thing about it is that we had come from Arizona to Alabama. And when I was interrogated by Rachel Israel after my son was kidnapped, she actually said, we have reason to believe that you are out on bond for drug trafficking from Arizona. So she had known that we had come from Arizona and just used a fabricated reason in order to kidnap our son. And the person that she said that I ended up having a bail bondsman look up that person for me. She's Mexican and looks absolutely nothing like me. Her name's Danielle Ruiz, and she was arrested for drug trafficking. And they also put the name on Christian. My husband is Christian Holm. They said he was Richard Christian Holm, and the guy that actually looks nothing like him. And he was also arrested for drug trafficking at 2 separate times as the other girl. So they picked the closest names they could find to put on us to have a reason to come in, because by law, they cannot remove a child without a warrant unless there's an imminent emergency. So to them, they were creating an imminent emergency in order to remove our son from us that day.
Now, can we fast forward a little bit from here? Understand what you said, and again, this is the ultimate nightmare for any parent. It's hard to even fathom what you must have felt at the time, and what your husband must have felt like. But you ultimately go to court, and you are cleared of these things, are you not? And he is as well, correct?
Yep, correct.
So you are who you claim to be.
Yep.
And despite this, there is no readiness or willingness to return your child to you.
Correct.
So what did you do?
So the very first hearing we had, by the way, like I said, no warrant, no pickup order, no court order, no subpoena. I was given a ripped piece of paper after they kidnapped my son that said, be at court at this day, this time, here's the address. When your son is being held hostage, you're panicking. They use your vulnerability against you. So all we can do is go to court because they have our child and we don't even know where he is. So we went to the court hearing. We were immediately gagged, immediate gag order on us. It was not open to the public. It was very silent. We went to the newspaper anyway, and then the newspaper did put out an article about us literally right away. And we were cleared the very first hearing. They said, okay, sorry, this wasn't you. You are cleared. There was a national background check done, both no criminal history. But now that we have him, we have to go through the process.
What's that?
The process is they need to obtain federal funding. The only way they can obtain federal funding is keeping the child in care for at least 12 to 15 months. By that point, their goal is to terminate all rights because they will lose funding if they give the child back to family.
Well, what happened to the Bill of Rights and your rights as a citizen, your husband's rights as a citizen, and you are genetically the parents of this child, and this
Correct.
child is healthy and normal. What is the justification for withholding the child from its parents? That doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. They are using federal fundings and incentivizing the separation of families, and they are destroying the fabric of America by ripping families apart. And now that I have been in this now for 8 years, almost 8 years, it'll be 8 years in October this happened. And I have not seen my son since he was 1 year old. They allowed us to see him for about a year. Every single week we had visits with him at the office, supervised by local police. I actually asked the police, what gives you the right to be here? What are you going to do if I walk out of this building with my child and go home? They said you would be arrested for obstruction of justice. And I asked them, I said, who pays you? And they said, we are off duty. Every single time they were off duty, receiving private checks from Child Protective Services to monitor our visits. So
But
we
Child
actually,
Protective Services is not a federal agency, is it?
correct, they're not. So they are actually, most of the time, they're NGOs, they're non-governmental organizations, and they're privatized, especially in Florida where I live. They are private organizations, just like my organization. It's private. So they simply receive funds from the Adoption Safe Families Act to do exactly what they're doing. They actually do not have any authority over families, and they are assuming authority and busting their way into families. And I don't want to say I'm one of the lucky ones, but I'm one of the lucky ones that hasn't ever been charged falsely. I haven't been arrested. They did arrest my husband approximately 8 times over the last 8 years on false charges, just for him going to local police and asking questions. We went all over the place. We filed charges with the FBI, the Department of Justice, every single local police station that we could go to, we spoke to. We went to the governor's office on several occasions. The door was shut in our face. We went to Washington, D.C. for 3 months. We stood outside of the White House with protest signs, alerting the American people. We went to the Capitol building and knocked on every single door of every single senator, left cards, left evidence. We had all of our evidence on CDs. We gave it to everyone. We sent out notices to all of Congress. We have not heard back from anyone.
Now, you actually went to the senators from Alabama.
Yep, we
And
went to the
that
senators.
includes Senator Tommy Tuberville right now.
Well, at the time it was Richard Shelby.
Yeah,
So
well, I'm not surprised about Shelby,
right.
but Tuberville is not Shelby. So if you have not turned to Tommy Tuberville, you need to do that. He's a compassionate man, and he's also, very, let's put it this way, he's very fair-minded and oriented to justice.
Yes.
I think he's someone you absolutely need to talk with.
I believe that. So throughout the process, I'll move along a little bit. Our rights were terminated without our knowledge. They had a court hearing that we were not aware of. They do this to many families. It's not unique. I'm an advocate now for many families through our organization. And it is the same playbook over and over and over and over. Rights are terminated without their knowledge. And then it was actually posted. This is supposed to be a private courtroom that no one's allowed in, but the termination of parental rights was posted on Facebook by a stranger who was stalking me. And he somehow got his hands on the termination of parental rights document from the courtroom. And that's how I found out, was via Facebook. And they stopped visits. I was never able to see my child again. I have no idea where he is. So that's when we started traveling and going to everywhere we could, and bringing all the evidence. We even went to the military. We went to the Navy, the Air Force, the National Guard, the Army, everywhere. We showed them domestic terrorism is right here. It's not coming. It's already here. So we gave them all of our evidence. We literally tried to do everything we could possibly do. We filed every single court document in every single court we could. I mean, we went through all of it. And at the time, I felt very alone. Like I said, I got very depressed. It brought me to the lowest of lows. And people often ask me, how can you be so positive? How can you be so happy? And I have to say, the only reason I am here right now is because of the love of Christ within me. And it is the only way I was able to get out of darkness, to find some even resemblance of light. I knew I had to be a voice for the American families that are being destroyed. I knew I had to be a voice for the children like my son that have nowhere to go, and they don't know what's going on. So I found the light within to be able to do what I'm supposed to do for God. And in the process, I was introduced to she's my best friend now, Sylvia Beachy. She was a CPS whistleblower. And she contacted me about 5 years ago. And she said, I'm a social worker with CPS, and I am seeing a lot of things that I am not agreeing with, and it is scaring me. And I need to see your documents. Are you able to show them to me? I need to see proof on the parent side, because what they do is compartmentalize. They don't show the social workers what's going on for real with the parents. The social workers are pretty much brainwashed into thinking every parent that has their child removed is a bad person. They're on something, or they've done something. And she started realizing that's not true. She started asking questions, and then she started being retaliated against by her supervisors. She worked at a group home. She had asked why there's quotas. She actually has quotas as a social worker to fill the group homes. If a child goes out of the group home and goes into an adoptive family or back home, they have to find new children. Well, where are they going to get them? Where are they going to get them? People like me.
Yeah, but it's bizarre to me that we would be in search of children to take from their parents. That doesn't make any sense at all. Is this for the purpose of re-educating the children, or putting them in a different environment to change them into something? Or is this just another form of child trafficking in which there's a lot of money at stake?
There is definitely all of that. So it is a lot of money involved. Like I said, through the Adoption Safe Families Act, it incentivizes the removal of children away from families and puts them in the hands of strangers that are interrogated less than the parents they steal the child from. So these children end up in pedophile rings. They end up in group homes. And then there's runaways. The runaways that run away from the group homes, they are not accounted for. So every single year, there's 880,000 children that go missing, but they're not counting the runaways from foster care. So Sylvia's situation in her group home, she's who I started this nonprofit with. So she ended up quitting. She left. She was the CPS whistleblower. She was told, when a child runs out of that door, do not go after them. You will be arrested if you go after that child. There's no missing child report. They cannot call 911. They have to call a local number that goes to a police officer. The police officer comes out, does a little report, puts a bolo out on the child, and that is it. So that child runs out. If there's traffickers on the street corner, guess who they're picking up right then and there? That child. So it's already been an FBI statistic that 88% of the sex trafficking in this country is coming from foster care, but no one's talking about it. And then there's parents like me where I don't even know where my child is. He could be one of those missing children that isn't even reported in statistics because they don't have to. And I want to never know. And no one's looking for that child. And so they end up in trafficking rings, and everybody is getting paid except the parents and the child.
Well, here, if I could just interrupt for a second there.
Yeah.
You know, you are revealing the worst underbelly in this country that I think I'm familiar with. I mean, this is incomprehensible to me. I'm sure a lot of people are listening or having difficulty understanding it. It's so horrendous, so horrific.
Yeah.
And I, my heart goes out to you. I can't imagine a mother going through what you have under any circumstances. And why is the key question. And I guess you're answering it at least in part now with the child trafficking response. Couple of things. First of all, I really think that you should go back to Washington and you should try to see Senator Tuberville. I can tell you that your discussion today will reach him. All right.
Yeah, we plan on it. We have a lot of plans coming up. We plan on traveling to DC. We keep speaking out. When Sylvia and I got together 5 years ago, she left CPS and she said, we have to do something because nothing's going to get done unless the people come together. And what better way to unite people than this cause? This is not a political thing. I mean, this isn't left or right. This is literally trafficking. Our families are being destroyed.
And you have all of these churches
that
should have an interest in supporting you and helping you with this. And I know that Senator Tuberville is very serious about, his Christianity. So I'm telling you, this will reach him. Now, the second part of this, because we're coming to the end, is you need to be very clear to the audience how they can help you, where they should go, what they should look for, because I can't imagine anyone not wanting to help you and the organization you represent now. So tell us that.
Okay, so we do have a nonprofit. It's grassroots. It's completely for the people, and we have families every day coming to us with my story over and over and over. Families being destroyed. So we need help with families as well as my son. It's all a part of it. So we are revamping our website. It will be up hopefully by the end of the week. It's rescuethefosters.com. We are going to have rescuethefosters.org as well. There'll be donation button on there. Anything and everything helps with legal expenses and just trying to get the truth out. I mean, we need private investigators to help us. We need all hands on deck because our children and families are absolutely destroyed right now. And it is the fabric of America, and we need to come together. We need people advocating and volunteering in group homes. And you can do that. It's a simple application, volunteering in group homes for foster children, and see what's going on yourself. You can see it with your own two eyes. You can also reach me at my email, Danielle, rescuethefosters@gmail.com. And I will be more than happy to answer any questions. I do have a podcast every Thursday night where we have many different families every single week. We have a family on every single week, literally, with similar story. And that is on Rumble and Foxhole. It's Insight. So INSITE. Myself, my two partners, Sylvia and Gino, host the show, and we have amazing families on every single week. So you can start looking at that podcast, and we put out information as much as we can. So anything and everything helps. We need everybody to come together. If we can't stand together for this cause, I don't know what's going to happen, because if this can happen to me, this can happen to literally anybody in this country at any time. They can come in, rip your children away, and cause an entire fiasco to make you look like a monster, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, I think that's the bottom line for everyone who is listening and everyone who sees this. We have to put ourselves in your position and understand that this could actually happen to any number of us. Danielle, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us and tell us your story. And I'm sure you will reach a lot of people now who will be interested in helping you. And again, I would make every effort to reach Senator Tuberville, but we'll make sure that the link to this story reaches his office and reaches him.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danielle, and God bless.
Thank you. You too.